Well, this is the last in our expert series, and Ange Anderson is a really innovative educator. She's been a principal of a school and now a consultant, but she has this was originally just meant to be about using play, but she shares a whole lot of interesting things that they have done. Now, it is based on her work in a specialist school, and I could see for some people in mainstream, you might be like, I'm not sure how I use that, but I think it's really, really interesting. And I always say not every strategy works for everybody and strategies wear out. But I think there are some little gems you can take away from this or just listen to it as something interesting and innovative. And gosh, we could have gone into so many more things. She's using technology in amazing ways. Make sure you look up her website after the links on my page, because she's doing all sorts of things. Like she's got a book on doing trampolining and all sorts of very, what I'd call disruptive, I suppose a bit like Uber type activities. And I think it's worth us thinking about a range of different ways. I love that saying, if children don't learn the way we teach, maybe we should teach the way they learn. And she's taking complex learners, ODD, PDA, children who haven't been learning in their classrooms and looking, well, what can we do differently? And I personally found it fascinating. I want to go to Wales and visit these schools. It just sounds incredible. I mean, even things like using the schools outside school hours. Yeah, we've got these facilities that are just sitting there at the end of the day. Why don't we get in adults with disabilities come in and use those sensory rooms or a swimming pool at a specialist school or over the school holidays? Like, so interesting. Anyway, I found it a fascinating conversation. I am always about trying new things, learning new things. And I must say, I have re-listened to this myself because there were so many things I'm like, what was she talking about? I don't know anything about that. And then I've gone off and researched it. So I hope you find it as interesting. This is the whole idea of getting these experts on. And I hope you've enjoyed the expert series. If you haven't listened to all of them, I'd encourage you to go back and listen to the range of experts that I've had on over this series. And if you know someone I should have on, if you enjoyed this expert series and think, Sue, you should do this again, and I know someone you should have on, please let me know. I'm always keen to hear from my listeners. And as always, I believe that we all need to be very eclectic in our listening. And I think that Ange Anderson is a very eclectic educator. And I hope you enjoy hearing her ideas and philosophy as much as I did. Hi everyone, welcome to the Sue Larkey podcast. As I always say, you have to embrace difference to make a difference. Let's dive into today's podcast. Well, welcome everybody. I am absolutely thrilled to have Ange Anderson joining us from Wales. She is an amazing advocate for our neurodiverse children, having worked in specialist schools and with children aged between 2 and 11, and 75% of the children were on the autism spectrum. She's also written a range of fantastic books, from play through to using technology. But in this podcast, I want to do a bit of a dive into understanding using play, because this is such an important part of our development for our children, particularly around sensory. So welcome, Ange.
Hi, great to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely thrilled. So why do you see play as so important for our neurodiverse children?
Well, as we know, neurodivergence covers a host of learning differences, from Down syndrome through to autism. And many of our neurodivergent students, many of ours, responded best to routine and structure, teach stations, for instance, timetables, now and next cards, and so on. Our neurodivergent students seem to benefit from having order. However, suddenly, we had more students attending school who had pathological demand avoidance, who could not cope with structure and routine, who seemed to prefer chaos. We needed to find a way for them to be happy in school and to learn in a way that they didn't feel threatened by. And the answer was learning through play. We had already trained a couple of staff as play therapists through the PT UK to become, to become a PT UK, if somebody were to just use a search engine, it could find out what there was. To become a play therapist in the UK, you needed a degree. So our trained staff delivered individual play therapy sessions. These were the ones who were trained by PT UK, which is a degree status. And that might include, some of the therapy sessions might include sand play, art therapy, small world toys, and so on. However, these were individual sessions lasting 40 minutes. And they would have to prepare for those, the staff, they'd have to write up afterwards, they'd have to produce a report for the governing body and so on. And we found that students really benefited from play therapy. And so we also introduced a play therapy that didn't require degree status. And this is available online if any of your listeners wish to look into it. And it's called VIP, which is Venture into Play. And it's a cost-effective form of play therapy that our teaching assistants could deliver. So a search engine will find that for you. And VIP was successful in delivering both individual play sessions as well as small group play sessions. So, this was great for us. Other therapies we also used involving play were things such as Lego therapy, which was another successful small group therapy session. And once again, staff were trained to deliver it. So that's included in my book about Lego play therapy. And you can actually learn how to deliver Lego play therapy in a school through my book. You can go on a course, and certainly we initially sent teachers on a course. But you can also just study from the book, and you'll be able to deliver it from that. So we had both of those already active in our school, and students could be drawn out of class to receive those interventions. And again, these sessions lasted about 40 minutes. However, the students that had pathological demand avoidance, as well as autism, needed a full-time play approach to learning. No other way worked. If we were to look at the development of a child, we see why play is hugely important for neurodivergent children. And I go into that in detail in my book on learning through play for children with PMLD and complex needs.
So I'm really, really interested because with our pathological demand avoidance, did you do it we use the term oppositional defiance disorder in Australia. Do you use that term at all?
Yes, we do. For us, it's slightly different. But yes, we do use that as well. Yes.
Yeah. So, they're different, but I was just interested if you had any children with oppositional defiant disorder that you tried the play therapy with.
Yes. And it works for them as well.
Right. I just wanted, great. Yeah. So can you pretend I was coming in and watching a Lego session with a child with PDA or ODD? What would that look like if I was walking into the room to observe? Can you give us a little, vinaigrette, an idea of how that would look?
You're better off, in a sense, in looking at the DIR floor time with the PDA. Children with PDA certainly would going into a Lego therapy session would benefit. But Lego therapy, as in with the other play therapies that we delivered for individuals and small groups, all work in a different way in that depending on the child and where they're at, we might give them an individual play therapy session or an individual Lego therapy session, whereas usually we aim with a Lego therapy session for there to be 3 students, so that one's the builder, one's the designer, so one builds, one designs, and one tells people what to do and so on. So there's always, you try to have 3 in a Lego therapy session. And like I say, there's full instructions in my book on how to do that because it's quite detailed. So it depends on where the child is at. If the child could not cope with other children, which sometimes happened with children who had PDA, they needed full attention on themselves, and might upset the whole of the session with the other children because they demanded the full attention. So that took a while probably to get them into being able to work in a small team. whereas DIR floor time is entirely different. And I had researched DIR, which is Developmental Individual Relationships, that stands for, floor time. And I felt that that could be the answer for those students. And a couple of my staff, volunteered to go on the training for school-based DIR, because you can deliver DIR at home. So we introduced it into a specific class, and the results were absolutely amazing. So we had a class devoted just to DIR. So it sounds a bit like a cop-out where staff just let students play, but it's so much more than that. It requires a lot of planning because the students still have the same individual education plans, but they have to be delivered through play, instigated by the student, so that they don't feel that they're being dictated to, but that they remain in control of the situation, because for them, they have to be in control.
100%.
Quite magical watching children who had been extremely disruptive in a structured class suddenly blossom because they were studying, for instance, the life cycle of a butterfly, which was what they may have been climbing over chairs in the classroom previously to watch outside, whilst what was happening in the class held no interest for them whatsoever because the butterfly had caught their attention. So creating an environment where the student can be successful is the key, as it's sometimes the environment that causes the behaviour. So the old adage, if a child can't learn the way we teach, then we need to teach the way they learn, is so true. There is no point in wasting your time and energy in an approach that consistently fails. So some of the students who thrived in the DIR floor time classes chose to eventually return to a more structured class where they were with their old friends and so on. Yet some students remained at the cognitive level of a play approach to learning and remained in the DIR class because that was cognitively where they were at. And so, as I've said, you teach the way that they learn. You don't teach everybody in the same way. And so for a lot of children, again, if you read the book, you will find why cognitively a lot of children are at the play approach, particularly those with pathological demand avoidance. So in the DIR class, they were regularly assessed and had their individual education plans regularly updated so that their progress was on record for everybody to see, anybody visiting the school, for governors, for everybody to find out how this worked. It was so successful that a lot of the other classes in the school that had a more structured teach approach used a lot of DIR floor time rehab policies and so on. Again, these are all in the school in the book. So all of the policies helped them to introduce DIR floor time within the class setting in their classes as well. So a lot of teachers decided to do that. And I must admit that certainly made it easier for some of the children who wanted to go back into an ordinary class now that they were able to learn in a way that suited them, because those teachers had all learned how to deliver that kind of play approach to learning. And so their individual education plans were adapted to meet that approach to learning within that class.
I love that. So how many children were in the DIR specific classroom in that?
5 to 6 usually, yeah. 5 to 6. Sometimes it would go down to 3 if some had gone back to their classrooms. And sometimes we had some children in the school who would go in there for a specific time of the day.
Yeah.
So there were some who just went into that classroom for part of the morning. Because our school was quite different to a lot of schools, I understand that, in that we delivered over 25 therapies. So we had all different therapies going on through the day that some of those students actually went to and benefited from. I didn't want to take that away from them. So if they already had an individual therapy plan, and they benefited from something and they went to it. So it could have been Lego therapy. It could have been the individual play therapy. It could have been vibroacoustic therapy. it could have been, a number of different therapies. So if they benefit, music therapy, for instance, a lot of them went to music therapy. So if they benefited from something, we didn't want to take that away from them.
No.
So they might still go to that. And for some students, because they were lined up for a lot of different therapies that benefited them, then they just came into the DIR floor time room for a specific time of the day, and that was planned around that particular child as well. So, a lot of my money in school went on ensuring that staff, teaching assistants, were trained in delivering therapies. They felt very good about themselves then because they were qualified in certain areas. And then they delivered that area. They were in charge of that area within the school. This gave them a lot of kudos. This gave them empowerment. It made them
ownership. And I think it's so important with our teaching assistants that they play such an integral part and often have a very special relationship with our students. So giving them an area of expertise.
Yes, and their pay is usually so poor that to give them an extra skill that they can use. I mean, one of our staff, we trained in, our teaching assistants, we trained in reflexology. Now, that's quite expensive for us as a school, but, she was able to use that, obviously, within the school. If she chose to use it outside the school and have a practice of her own after school, that's up to her.
Yeah.
So you are trying to ensure that you give them something that makes them feel important within the school, that you value, that they value, that the parents value, the governors value, and so on. And it becomes an integral part of what you deliver as a school that caters for students who are neurodivergent. The old days hopefully are gone in most schools. And I won't go into detail of what they used to be like because it just sends shudders down me. But yes.
No, I love that. And so in your other classroom, how many children are in when they go back to when you're referring to their other classroom, how many children are in the other classrooms?
A maximum of 10.
Right. Yeah. I'm just sort of trying to understand how it is for you compared to us in Australia. Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. So if I went into a DIR room what sort of activities, like you've mentioned the butterfly, what else would I see happening in there? What sorts of things would we see?
Well, one of the boys who they all had extreme behaviour before they went into that class. One of the boys just would love to go out and play with water.
Mm-hmm.
If you let him play with water all day, he'd be more than happy. So that's what happened with him. He would have a day based on water play. But, you can measure with water. It's amazing what you can do. You can create stories with water. You can do all kinds of things through water. And so a lot of the time he would be playing through water. And when he got fed up of it, that was the key. Because when he didn't want to play with that anymore, you could introduce other things that you found he was interested in, because he would lead you into things that caught his interest. And then you could, through that, develop the plan further. So you're constantly looking at it from their viewpoint, from where they are. And then you're supporting them and helping them to develop and see what interests them. Because if they see what another child is doing, they think, oh, quite like that. And that would happen. So, for instance, one of the boys trains and train tracks, that was his. Sometimes people worry and say, you're pandering to something that they're obsessed by. No, you're not. It depends how you do it. So he was interested in trains. So he had constructed a complete train track through a third of the classroom with all different parts to the station and all the rest of it. But again, the IEP went through that to make sure that he was amazing. He wrote letters to MPs about the train that was coming into the town where the school was based, because he felt that it needed to be extended and so on. These came about through being allowed to do it from where he was at.
Absolutely.
So it was, and because he was enjoying and created so much, the boy who liked water actually wanted to go and get involved with him. Now, again, that's a kind of, well, before he would have been working parallel in a way, doing his own thing, still playing, but doing his own thing. Now he's wanting to work with somebody else. And is that child wanting to let him work with him? As it luck would happen, he did. And then they'd started to develop a friendship. So there's all kinds of stories about the kind of things that happened within that classroom as a result of letting them direct the teaching where it was going to go.
Yeah,
you know,
100%. In one of
you have to be trained in DIR. You have to be trained, and it's brilliant online. I mean, Stanley Greenbaum, hope I've got that name right, is the one who invented it. He's written a book. It's in the other room, otherwise I get it to show you, which is brilliant. He's written all about DIR floor time. It's an excellent book. And he tells you in the book exactly how to set it up and all the rest of it. But if you just search engine online and go online, there's courses for teachers all over the world, actually. And there's courses for parents. Because if you can do that approach early enough, when you start it, because a child like this will have behavior problems from an early age if you don't understand how you can approach them.
Yes.
And DIR Floor Time and his book tells you how to help with that. And so there is a parent support, and it shows you how to start with floor time. It's been amazing. You will see some amazing reviews from parents on how it's changed their family's life.
I can understand 100%, because what we're doing is we're not fighting the child. We're coming from their interest. And in one of my books that I wrote with a parent, we say, like, you know, how to motivate the child. And we put, use their special interest, no matter how bizarre. Use their special interest, no matter how bizarre. And we sort of put that 10 times, that sentence, because you really, it doesn't matter how bizarre, whether it's water or whatever, if you can start with that and create that engagement. So it makes so much sense. You can build a whole program coming from there. And particularly for our most disengaged students and oppositional, because my experience is you've got to get their anxiety down. So what I'm hearing is when they're getting to do something they're interested in, they're going to be more relaxed, more engaged, and therefore absolutely will be happy for another child to come in because they don't have to fight for control. So that's how I'm hearing it. That's
right. As long as they can get on with what they like doing, they don't mind who's next to them. And if they can help, if they need something, and that person's going to go and get it for them because, you know, it's going to make this this train track even better. Well, you know, I can use you. That's perfectly all right. Of course, these children with these interests are the people who are the geniuses, really, who might make a difference to the future of mankind with some of the things that they can do. So, you know, being neurodivergent isn't something that's awful. It's got so many pluses, many pluses. It's helping a parent, helping teachers to see it from that side rather than see it as a problem. See it as an advantage. This is amazing. What can this child show me? What can I learn from this child? You know?
Absolutely. And I think this is when you come from there, the child knows that too. I mean, if you think a child's a problem, and they'll be a problem. But if you come from, what's this child going to teach me? What can I learn? What can we do to engage that child? And I can hear that in your passion for seeing the changes. So I love that. Yeah. Now, I know you also like doing sensory profile of children. Can you tell us more about the sensory profiles?
Yes, because I believe there's absolutely no use in creating an individual behaviour plan, an IBP as we call it, when it's the environment, as I've said, that causes the behaviour. So we understand nowadays that certain sensory overloads for individuals can result in a negative response. It seems obvious if you, for instance, hear a baby crying continuously in a supermarket as you try to shop, that you could be forgiven for A, wishing they would leave, B, lose concentration on what you intend buying, C, start to have a headache, or D, complain. Now, if you're a child in those circumstances, you might not have acquired the social skills needed to try and ignore the intrusion on your inner world, on your mind. And a behavioral approach may seem the most apt. So when we're stressed, we don't perform to our optimum. And sometimes busy classrooms create these sensory overloads. So we've come a long way in our understanding of sensory overloads. Ear defenders are common practice in many schools today. And it makes sense, therefore, that every student entering the school doesn't just have an assessment of their academic ability. We need a sensory profile of each child. Now, in the UK, certainly in Wales, it does annoy me that the first thing you're supposed to do, even in a special school, is assess their academic ability, when what you should be doing is finding out what their sensory needs are. So we need a sensory profile on every child. It is this profile that will determine how they learn best and what we need to put in place in order for them to learn best. So an individual sensory profile is essential. In Appendix 3 in my book, Learning Through Play, you can find the eco-psychologist Michael Cohen's 54 natural self-evident senses and sensitivities, such as the radiation senses, which include a sense of colour, as well as a sense of moods, which can be attached to colours, the feeling senses, which include hearing, but also the sense of proximity, which many students who are neurodivergent have problems with, the chemical senses, which include smell and taste, but also appetite, and the hormonal sense, very important, the mental sense, which include mental senses, which include the sense of pain, the sense of fear, the sense of time, the sense of mood, the sense of consciousness, and so on. After reading the list of potential sensitivities, you may decide that your child has issues with hearing and proximity. You may decide that your child is easily distracted by background noises, and that may inform a teacher or childminder or grandparent, even that your child would benefit from ear defenders or even having AIT or FST therapy. Now, those are auditory integration training and filtered sound training, which you may have heard about, which is a way of, when we're born, we come off the production line, as it were. When a car comes off the production line, there still may be some things wrong with it, which we find out about later. Now, a human being is even more amazing than a car, obviously, with so many different things that go to make up that person. So the fact that this isn't developed properly, the brain to ear function is not the auditory messages from the brain to the ear, is not fully finished for that production line, as it were. So FST training and AIT training is a kind of training for the ear to brain. And it's kind of like you have the music plays, but it stops and starts and there's bits of the music missing. And your brain, believe it or not, channels into that to try and repair it. And in a sense, then it repairs the auditory to brain connection, as it were. So, wow. You can find out, obviously, about that. I write about that in one of my books as well. And I'm trained I'm qualified in training in teaching that. And I when you go on these, when you do CPD for your school, the person who trains in it then goes back to, in my school certainly, would go back and train a load of other staff so that you can then allow a teaching assistant to deliver that as constantly as much as it's needed for that particular
just on that, how long would a child normally have to do that program for you to see change in their auditory processing?
I'd have to check in my in what I've written about it, but I think we would do like a 6-week session, and then we would wait and assess for another 6 weeks to see what difference it made. And we have evidence and written evidence and percentages and so on, and reports that obviously we gave the governing body and the local authority and so on and so forth, in that, for instance, a lot of our, not a lot, but certainly some of our students had a trouble with phonics and listening to the end words and so on like that, didn't seem to hear them. And we brought in this particular phonics program for children with who are neurodivergent into the school, and there were still some children who couldn't do that at all. So we decided, with the parents' blessing, that they would do filtered sound training and see whether or not that made a difference. And so we had their results before they did it from this particular POPAT, the program's called, from the phonic training program. So we had their results before they did it. And then, 6 months down the line, we allowed that kind of expansive time to see what difference it made. The difference so we did 6 children as a pilot thing, and for 4 of the 6 children, the difference was astronomical. It changed. They were hearing the ends of words and the sounds and beginning of sounds and so on that they hadn't been able to before through using filtered sound training. One of them had severe behaviour problems as well, and obviously went into the play therapy approach, into the DIR floor time approach. And we would go back to him at a later date with the POPAT study again, because he was all over the place, and it wasn't just that was his issues. And his parents were going through a divorce at the time and everything else. So there was a lot of emotional stuff tied up for him. So it didn't necessarily work for him. And then another child was absent quite a lot. So it didn't necessarily work for him. And it was something we had to do with him at a later date. But 4 out of the 6, it had.
That's great. That's amazing. Sorry. Amazing. What was that phonics program called?
POPAT, POPAT, capital letters.
Do you recommend that?
Oh, yes, very much. Yes.
Okay, because sometimes people ask me, and I love hearing what other schools and stuff. That's great. So I'm fascinated in the auditory processing and doing those the sensory. I love the idea. If every child came in with a sensory profile, that would be amazing, because I often say that's the often overlooked cause of behaviour. And unless we rule out the sensory, then we're really wasting our time, Yeah. So for so many of our children. So I love that.
If you go to the resource section in my book on page 120, there's a sensory profile template that you can copy and complete. And meaning you have a sensory profile for your child that can help your family and others understand the needs of your child. So if your child has a sensory impairment, hard of hearing, vision impaired, then you probably have support services visiting the school, and this can be added to the profile. If you're a teacher completing a sensory profile, then it must be completed with the support of parental views. So in a sensory profile, you would record sensory-related behaviour when it occurs, and parents who complete a sensory profile on their child should share it with relatives who may look after them, childminders, nursery, etc., and ask them to add to it if they feel able. Remember to delete anything they've mastered or overcome, keep it up to date, and use it. They may benefit from different therapeutic and technological interventions that allow them to be in a better frame of mind to learn. So one of our students with severe autism would visit the Venture into Play therapy room at the beginning of each day. She found the busyness of the classroom too much first thing in the morning. So in the VIP room, she played with small world toys for 20 minutes every day. And once she put them away, she was ready to face the day in her own classroom. The initial introductions and all the rest that happened in classroom, she couldn't cope with, but she could cope with the class the rest of the day if she had VIP beforehand. So you might wish to make a note of attention issues related to impaired sensory input. That would go on the sensory profile. Challenges with focus or emotional regulation as a result of their sensory needs. Meltdowns that impair functionality and where and when they happen. You need to trial strategies to see if they're effective. and working strategies always added to the profile, and non-working ones dismissed, and a note put on there, this doesn't work, please don't try this, that kind of thing. And monitor the effectiveness constantly at home and in school.
I love that. Because I think what you're saying is then we know, we get a feel for the child, but also it evolves and changes. And I was very lucky to work at an autism school with occupational therapists who just opened my eyes to the importance of understanding sensory. But I love the fact that it sounds like your school was incredibly eclectic in their use of so many different therapies and ideas. I love all that. And I know you're doing a lot with
school. Yeah, we were a pioneer in school for Wales. In our inspection, it was the therapeutic approach that we were praised for. Yeah,
I love that. And I know you're doing a lot with technology too. So I'll make sure I link on my website to all the other things that you're doing. But I was very keen to talk to you about the play. I'm conscious we've been talking for a while, but last thing, you mentioned the need for like sensory playrooms. How did you use those? What did that look like?
Because we might wish to ask if it is an unmet sensory need causing the behaviour, is for instance the reason the student throws chairs is because they need more proprioceptive input. Mm-hmm. So some schools may have soft playrooms enabling body tactile stimulation. No one wants to see a student with a pent-up sensory issues who is still working through the trajectory play schema, which is when they like to see how things move, feeling the need to throw a chair in class because the school has provided no alternative to meet those sensory needs. A student can form a maladaptive schema as a result of that schema not being properly directed. The student should have even been given the opportunity to have a session of basketball first thing, so they can throw, or use the soft playroom to throw themselves around. So you may put down the need for using specific sensory rooms on that profile. So some schools have dark rooms to support the visual senses, and our dark room also delivered vibroacoustic therapy. So if you think about it, the whole of the universe is made up of vibrations, and some of our students benefited from vibrational therapy. That's a whole nother topic.
I was going to say, that sounds like a whole nother topic. I think people are going to be madly Googling after this session. I'll try and put some links in the podcast.
If they go to my website, Ange Anderson, therapeutic.co.uk, there's links on there to YouTube videos that I've done on all of those different therapies. Or if there's one on there that they want to find out about and I haven't put it on there yet, just ask me and I'll put one on.
Fantastic.
So some light rooms may be used to deliver reflexology, TAC-PAC, which is another great therapy, which again is a sensory therapy. Story massage, again, a touch therapy in a way. And we developed the use of play therapy, role therapy, and virtual reality. And we had a virtual reality therapy room, another whole subject, to help students move on from maladaptive schemas. But this takes time and repetition so that they can adapt to the new schema. Once sensory needs are met, they can focus more and get in the right frame of mind to learn. Behaviours on the whole tell us that something is not working for that child. You can battle on with trying to get that student to comply with the way you teach. You could mistakenly see it as a battle of wills, but you will be wasting important time that you cannot get back, and you could inadvertently be sending that child into a meltdown. We are in the 21st century, and it's time we taught children in the way that they learn best and not expect them to learn in the way that we have always taught. We are living during the fourth industrial revolution when technology could provide the answer and support. We need to change the way we teach. And for some children, teaching through play is the way to teach them.
Wow. Well, that is a fantastic note to end on, Ange. I mean, Thank you for sharing. So much to learn. I've learned all these terms and so much information, but I think your passion that we engage these children, that we ensure that they learn and that we address their needs, is just shines through. And I really would encourage all my listeners to go and look at your book, and you've got a range of fabulous books and resources, and have a look at your YouTube. I think I love hearing the diversity of programs for our diverse learners. It makes sense. That's exactly what we need. So thank you so much for giving up your time. And Wales is very lucky to have someone who's so passionate to bring all these different programs to our beautiful learners. So I can't thank you enough. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a privilege to be on your program, knowing all that you do yourself. Thank you.
Oh, you're lovely. Thank you so much. I hope you've got some great tips and strategies to make a difference. Remember, strategies wear out, and not every strategy works for everybody. If you're ready to dive in deeper to more strategies and ideas to make a difference, I'd highly recommend you consider Dr. Tony Atwood or my online courses. For more information, visit my website www.sulaki.com.au.